Calaroga Shark Media.
From Washington, D.C., where former presidents face criminal trials and current presidents face accusations of cannibalism, this is Ballot, the podcast where we navigate the bizarre world of American politics, one laugh at a time.
First up, we'll dive into the historic criminal trial of Donald Trump, where jurors are promising to put aside their opinions and focus on the facts. Well, at least that's what they say. Then, we'll take a look at President Biden's latest gaffe, where he apparently confused Papua New Guinea with a cannibal haven. Yikes. And finally, we'll hear from Michael Douglas, who has some choice words about the age debate between Biden and Trump. All that and more, coming up on Ballot. The Guardian took a look at The Rock's presidential ambitions. They remind us that recently, The Rock graced Fox News with a lengthy interview in which he announced he will be withholding his wildly coveted endorsement in the forthcoming U.S. presidential election, having given it to Joe Biden last time. The reason? The Rock believes that very endorsement, his specifically, caused an incredible amount of division in our country. In 2022, The Rock said, "I got a visit from the parties asking me if I was going to run, and if I could run, but he has left the door open, saying, if it ever happens, it'd be my honor to serve." It looks like even the Republican Party has its limits when it comes to offensive comedy. And apparently, that limit is Rob Schneider. According to a report in Politico, the former Saturday Night Live cast member and Adam Sandler's go-to sidekick performed a stand-up set at a Republican networking event last year that was so gross and vulgar that the host had to give him the hook just 10 minutes into his 30-minute set. Now I know what you're thinking. Rob Schneider? Offensive? No way. But apparently, even the GOP has a breaking point. Before he was unceremoniously cut off, Schneider managed to squeeze in a joke about Korean whorehouses. Classy, Rob. Real classy. The material was so raunchy that it caused at least one lawmaker, Cindy Hyde Smith of Mississippi, to get up and walk out. Her spokesperson confirmed she didn't have to listen to it, and so she got up and left. I guess when you're a Republican senator, you have the luxury of walking away from offensive content. If only the rest of us were so lucky. The roughly 150 people in attendance, including more than 40 Senate chiefs of staff, were even emailed an apology by the event's organizers the next day. You know it's bad when you have to apologize for booking Rob Schneider. I mean, isn't that just implied at this point? It seems like not everyone is buying into the myth of Donald Trump, the business mastermind. In fact, a former official who served under him has a few choice words about the ex-president's supposed business prowess. Enter Miles Taylor, the former Homeland Security Chief of Staff. In a recent interview, Taylor didn't mince words when it came to Trump's business acumen. "Donald Trump is not a great businessman," he said. "He is a failed businessman across the board." Ouch. Talk about a performance review you don't want to get. Taylor went on to list some of Trump's less than successful ventures, including Trump Steaks, Trump Vodka, and Trump Airlines. I don't know about you, but I'm sensing a pattern here. Maybe slapping your name on everything isn't the surefire path to success after all. Monday is the day 12 lucky New Yorkers will have the privilege of hearing opening statements from prosecutors and defense lawyers as they paint very different pictures of the evidence against none other than Donald J. Trump. A president on trial? That's unprecedented. Well, buckle up, because this case has the potential to reshape America's political landscape and test the limits of our justice system. It's like a real-life episode of Law and Order, POTUS edition. At the heart of this case is Trump's alleged efforts to cover up a sex scandal involving a hush money payment to a porn star. Because let's face it, nothing says presidential quite like a good old-fashioned sex scandal cover-up. Am I right? For those of you who aren't familiar with legal proceedings, opening statements at a trial are like overtures. Both sides present a preview of what the jurors will hear from witnesses and see in documentary evidence. It's like a movie trailer, but instead of explosions and romance, you get legalese and courtroom drama. These opening statements are tightly scripted performances where lawyers try to persuade and charm the jurors who will ultimately decide their fate. Before any jurors were seated, defense lawyers asked them a crucial question. What do you think of the former president? And boy, did they get some honest answers. One juror called Trump selfish and self-serving, while another praised him for speaking his mind. I guess it's true what they say. You can't please everyone, especially when you're on trial. These jurors seem to understand the gravity of their role. One juror, a software engineer, put it this way: "I think that I can look at this as a person on trial, any other American citizen, and not take this person who used to be the president as that, and just stick to what's being shown to me." At the end of the day, these jurors have a huge responsibility on their shoulders. They'll have to weigh the evidence, assess the credibility of witnesses, and ultimately decide the fate of a former president. No pressure, right? But hey, if they can put aside their opinions and focus on the facts, maybe there's hope for our justice system after all. We'll be right back with more Ballot, including the story of President Biden's bizarre cannibal comments and what the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea has to say about it. Stay tuned. It seems like President Joe Biden has found himself in a bit of a diplomatic pickle after making some rather unusual comments about Papua New Guinea. Apparently, while speaking at an event in Pennsylvania, Biden mentioned that his uncle, an Army Air Corps aviator, was shot down in New Guinea during World War II and that his body was never found because, and I quote, "there were a lot of cannibals for real in that part of New Guinea." Now, I don't know about you, but when I think of diplomatic relations, the first thing that comes to mind is definitely not accusing a foreign nation of being home to a bunch of cannibals. As you might expect, the Prime Minister of Papua New Guinea, James Marape, was not too thrilled about Biden's remarks. In a statement, he defended his country, saying that it does not deserve to be labeled as such, and urged the United States to clean up the remnants of the conflict in the region. Here's the thing, though. U.S. military records about Biden's uncle's death make no mention of the aircraft being downed or of cannibalism. They simply state that the plane was forced to ditch in the ocean off the north coast of New Guinea for unknown reasons, and that the 3 men killed in the crash were never found. So, either Biden has some inside information that the rest of us don't, or he just really wanted to spice up his story with a little bit of sensationalism. I mean, nothing captures an audience's attention quite like a tale of cannibalism, right? It looks like Academy Award winner Michael Douglas has some thoughts on the age-old question, pun intended, of whether President Joe Biden is too old to be commander-in-chief. And let me tell you, he's not holding back. In a recent interview with CNN's Fareed Zakaria, Douglas, who is a sprightly 79 years young himself, was asked if he wished Biden had bowed out and let the field choose somebody else. But Douglas wasn't having any of it. He defended Biden, saying that everybody he's spoken to about the issue has told him that the president is as sharp attack and fine. Now, Douglas did acknowledge that we all have issues with memories as we get older, and that sometimes we forget names. He even mentioned that Biden has overcome a stutter in his life, which might cause him to pause occasionally. But here's where things get interesting. Douglas then dropped a not-so-subtle reminder about a certain former president named Donald Trump. He pointed out that Biden's entire cabinet, including his vice president, would be more than happy to work with him again in the next term. But when it comes to Trump, Douglas said, and I quote, "I cannot say that about the other candidate running because nobody in his cabinet from 2016 wants to be involved with him." NBC News reports that the share of voters who say they have high interest in the 2024 election has hit a nearly 20-year low at this point in a presidential race, which kind of sucks if you're me and host this podcast. Is there anybody out there? Well, that's all for this episode of Ballot. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride through the world of politics. Until next time, remember, if you can't laugh at the absurdity of it all, you might just cry.